Greetings from Melbourne, Australia, where I'm going to be working with professionals from Noah's Ark on the RBI so that they can have trainers to train other people to conduct the RBI. But today I want to talk about implementation science. Implementation science has received a lot of attention over the last 10 years or so, including in early intervention for children birth to 6 with disabilities and their families. And I also have been using implementation science and have developed some procedures for incorporating it into the implementation of the routines-based model. Today I want to talk about the 4 stages of implementation science as described by the National Implementation Research Network. You can go to nirn.org to find out more about the original work on implementation stages. The 4 stages are exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation. In exploration, entities that are interested in implementing a model or interested in changing their practices anyway, are looking for evidence-based practices and models for being able to improve their existing services. So in the case of the routines-based model, this often happens when places realize that they are using antiquated methods and that they should be using more functional, family-centered approaches in working in early intervention. So they start looking around at models and at practices and so on. And this is the time at which people often get in touch with me or some of the members of the RAM group, and you should check out the website www.ramgroup.info as one of the sources of information that people look for. During the exploration stage, they are identifying potential purveyors. Now, this is another piece of jargon from implementation science that means a person or group that has developed a program, a model, or a practice that is based in evidence and that can solve the problems of the people looking for solutions. The second stage then is installation. Once an entity, such as a country, a state, or a program, has identified a purveyor, for example, me or the routines-based model, then they start looking at what are the drivers that are required, drivers being another piece of jargon from implementation science, at the drivers that are required to be put in place to help effect a successful implementation of the practice. This can involve, for example, setting up policies that support the model that they've chosen. It can involve setting up training programs, especially coaching programs or in-service types of training. And it's a very important step because without the installation pieces in place, then the next 2 stages can flounder. The third stage is initial implementation, and this is often done with pilot sites. So some places will use pilots to work out the bugs, to take advantage of people who are early adopters of the model, people who are enthusiastic standard bearers for the model, who then can become trainers of other people. However, another potential way of implementing a model is to go whole hog right from the beginning. An example would be in New Zealand, which has implemented the routines-based model, and they decided early on, they did have some initial work in the northern region, but pretty quickly they decided that they wanted to implement the model nationwide right from the beginning. So those are essentially two of the two main methods that get decided during initial implementation, either pilots doing the model or working incrementally with the whole system. And then the fourth stage of implementation science is full implementation. Now, this is a little more complicated than it might seem, because the definition of full implementation can vary from really across the board implementation of the model. That would be, in our case, for all children and families in early intervention within that entity. Or it could be that a place, an entity decides that they are not going to really implement it fully, but they're going to implement it in certain places, for example. An example of this would be in the state of Nebraska, where they identified key communities where they really wanted to implement the model in all of its parts, but they did not mandate for the whole state to implement the full model. On the other hand, there are places such as New Zealand, for example, or the state of Maine, or the state of Tennessee, and other places that decided that they wanted to have all families receive the routines-based model. There are essentially two ways of looking at full implementation. Either all professionals in the entity are using the practices, or all families are receiving those practices. The latter is probably the more relevant criterion for full implementation, that all families are receiving the practices that to be implemented. The reason I've decided to focus on this in today's video blog or vlog is to point out the importance of taking a systematic approach to implementation through these 4 stages. And each stage has its own importance, its own set of criteria that one might use. And if you go to the aforementioned ramgroup.info website, or www.mcwilliamconsulting.com, you will see more information on how to take a systematic approach to implementation science when considering implementation of the routines-based model. So, greetings from Australia, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.